Hello and welcome. My name is Trismegistus, and today we're going to be reading through and speculating about the latest Factorio Friday Facts. Friday Facts 398, Fulgora, posted by Arundel. Hello there, where shall we go today? Welcome to Fulgora. You land on an unfamiliar planet, a lifeless and desolate place. The thin air is freezing cold but bone dry. A distant sun twinkles in the dull purple of the sky. Wispy clouds race by as a gale whips up sand that grates against your armour. So here it is then, the next planet, Fulgora. It looks pretty, nice. I don't know about you, but that looks pretty sweet to me as an icon and, an image. And clearly, just to spoil what's coming up, but clearly lightning and also wind, and it mentioned sandstorms in that introduction. Whether we'll actually get proper sandstorms, I don't know, but yes, clearly a blasted lightning planet, as was foretold by the people who used the AI image generation thing to work out what the planets were called. That appears to be one of the planets we're getting is Fulgora. As you look around, you find yourself in a desert with endlessly snaking dunes of dust-like sand. The dust almost seems to hover as though gravity were overwhelmed by static electricity. As you press forward, you pass peculiar pillars of fused sand and metal. The sand gives way to rock as you find yourself on the edge of a windswept plateau. I'll just let it play first off. So, it's just going to loop round now. The planet is very red, and some of the things later in this, it actually reminds me quite a lot of Mars, and particularly the Arnold Schwarzenegger film, the Total Recall, which is obviously based on the Philip K. Dick book, where they go to Mars and they discover certain things, which not to bury the lead, but yeah. Just pause here. We've got some kind of new plant. Obviously, it looks like some sort of tree. One would assume you can mine, you can chop it down, I guess, not mine it, but mine it and get wood out of it, perhaps. We haven't actually had confirmation that all of the new trees are going to be wood-bearing, but that has to be the assumption, I would guess. But it's clearly very barren. Stepping through it a little bit here, there's nothing here. It's a very, as per usual, nice texture that's very evocative and in keeping with the game. There's a new cliff. Now, if that's just a reskin of the standard cliffs, I think it may well be, but it does look significantly different. This, I think, is just decorative texturing. It could be something that we could perhaps mine or grab, but these are clearly decorative small rocks. There doesn't appear to be, and it could just be where they're running through, doesn't appear to be too many actual rocks on this. You've got some here, but they're pretty thin, and small and far between. So I'm wondering if perhaps, rocks, because of the nature of it being a windy, sandstormy planet, perhaps the rock, as it were, that rock feature that you can mine is perhaps less frequent, maybe? It's a bit of a random thought, that, though. I'm not sure whether these will be mineable. They're clearly some sort of equivalent of a mesa, like the big towery structures you get in sort of American deserts. We then get this. This is described as a plateau. You've obviously got here. It looks to me, and when I was watching all of these videos, they look like dead riverbeds. Although it does go on to explain what this is, and it might be something particularly interesting. But yes, it looks to me like they've come up with a way of generating like a sort of almost like a riverbed structure rather than actual rivers. It makes me wonder, we don't see any water in any of these, again, just to spoil the other videos. So is this another planet that doesn't have wet water? I had assumed when there was the thought that Fulgora, it's a lightning god, that maybe this would be a wet planet, there would be water there, and that, it would be traditional rainstorms doing the lightning, but it sounds like it's more because it's like very windy and dry. It's a static charge type lightning. But yeah, so it looks great. I mean, it obviously looks desolate and barren and all that sort of stuff, but very Martian in its look. Standing on the cliff edge, you see similar landforms in the distance, flat tables of rock standing tall from the shifting dark terrain below. The sky dims, and in a flash, the thunder that was on the horizon only moments ago is upon you. Lightning pierces the sky and strikes your energy shield. It can't take many more like this. Now, it does give a flashing lights warning. That's because we're going to see lightning. So if you do have photo epilepsy, then you may want to sort of skip ahead to the next part. But yes, so there are going to be flashing images in the next video. That does actually make me wonder if there is going to be a, perhaps an accessibility setting to turn off lightning flashes, because it'd be a shame if people with that issue, weren't able to play the game. But I mean, I guess someone could make a mod for it, couldn't they? But yeah, I hope that's something people can turn off. Okay, so again, it'll just repeat, but clearly there's a lightning storm happening. What this image to me, with its lightning that's in the kind of dust stormy areas, implies to me is that lightning isn't going to be continuous. That's also sort of what my feeling is from this first video, where there's no lightning strikes at all, and then it suddenly comes in. I forgot to actually mention in this one, you can actually see the ground. There's like a shake effect to the end. Can you see that? So I wonder if that's meant to be your warning that it might be too small for you to see, but basically we're just static and then the screen sort of shakes a bit. I wonder if that's a warning that lightning strikes are about to happen, perhaps, because it does look from this planetary image to me that lightning storms are going to be concentrated. There'll be an occasional hazard that pops up, and maybe you'll get really long and big storms, and occasionally there'll be loads and loads of lightning, and then maybe a big stretch without, and a short storm, and it'll be all sort of random and unpredictable, which makes obviously building relatively challenging. But yeah, so the engineer is being, it looks like, targeted by the lightning. It could just be coincidental, but it does make me wonder if the lightning is perhaps programmed, to target higher up structures, if you see what I mean. So if there's any, perhaps there's a height ranking for buildings, and buildings that are high up may get more lightning strikes, and it just sort of does it based on sea level, as it were. And so the engineer is I mean, I don't think they'll have coded the height in for the engineer, but they just make him an attractive point for lightning. But it does look like it's attacking it. It could just be for dramatic purposes, and they've done a video like this. But say these strikes do seem to be targeting the player. It could just be random, and it's just coincidence. And now we have this structure. So clearly, it's some sort of lightning rod. Now, whether it's intended as a lightning rod, or it's just it happens to be because it's a large structure, the lightning targets the large structure, it does look like a lightning rod, I would say, or something equivalent to that. It could be that it's also more intended as a lightning harvesting structure. So it's not so much a lightning rod that stops other buildings being hit. It is a way of gathering lightning. This goes back to, if you've seen my speculation video where I was talking about Fulgora and how maybe some of the mechanics might work. This seems to be in keeping with perhaps some of my ideas, that there will be these lightning rods that you can either use to protect it or gather lightning, and that would be quite an interesting mechanic to play with, I think, because you've then got, this solar panel effect where during the day they charge the accumulators and you run on accumulators overnight. If you've got an effectively randomized version of that, that would be quite interesting to try and work around, because you sort of, if you're going long periods without lightning, you need to store enough lightning power in order to, and harvest enough lightning power to go through that. So what's the longest period you might reasonably expect to go without lightning, and how concentrated is the lightning, and all these sorts of things are going to be quite interesting to play with. If it's also the mechanic, as I say, whether certain structures attract lightning, perhaps based on height, does that mean you can basically put a whole load of them in a row and just have all of all the lightning strikes happening and charging up your capacitors? Or is it more that they have an area of effect, that a lightning rod covers, say, 60 tiles or something, or 20 tiles or what have you, in a circle around it, and maybe you can't put them close to each other, or maybe you can, but it just overlaps, etc., etc. You could have all sorts of ideas there. But yeah, so it protects the player, is basically the point. So, the lightning hits this structure rather than the player. It does seem to have, there's like a flash that goes down it. I don't know if you'd see that. I think that's just an effect, but that might be the equivalent of, the electricity coming down into the thing. But also, this is meant to be an alien structure. This is not something the engineer has built. It's also clearly damaged and sort of broken. So whether we're going to make these or we're going to be able to research a technology based on these, I don't know, but it could be quite interesting. The other thing that's particularly interesting in this is at the bottom here. Unfortunately, it shows the play button when I do it. This is clearly what would you call it? A man-made, engineer-made, alien-made structure. I don't know if it's meant to be the alien equivalent of walls, but it is very interestingly shaped and it looks really good. It looks more like, I don't know if you can see here, so we've got the cliff, and it blends into the cliff. So how you would normally expect walls to look is very different to that. So is this effectively more like a player-made cliff, basically, rather than a wall that will connect to a cliff, if you see what I mean? These cliffs actually look really good. I don't know if they've done some work kind of improving cliffs generally, but these look really good. I think, if they are that good, I might even be tempted to keep them on, It looks like we're going to be kind of forced to play with cliffs kind of no matter what, really. But yes, this to me looks like a blending in. It's almost like, the aliens have used the natural cliffs and just sort of extended them round. It has I don't know, it's just my imagination maybe, but it has a bit of an organic kind of thing to it. It sort of looks like ribs or backbone, basically, which is really interesting. And it's a very distinctive style. But yes, so on to the next piece. In the stormy night, you run to evade the lightning while looking for shelter. Suddenly, multiple bolts of lightning strike the same location nearby. Some unknown silhouette looms over you. Could it be some rock formation, or perhaps another pillar of fused sand? No, this is nothing natural. This is alien. What is this alien structure? It is clearly ancient and beaten by the elements, but it does at least seem immune to the lightning. Deconstructing it gives you some useful materials, but no more answers. Perhaps it would have been more useful intact. Okay, third video then. So, it's basically just described what's going to happen in the video. So, it starts off, it's very quick. I'm just going to, because we'll play it through properly, but just so you can sort of see what's happening. The engineer deconstructs that building. Okay, so it's going to loop around again, but as noticed, the engineer deconstructs this building, but the text tells us that they don't get anything as such. They get some materials, and does it describe some interesting materials? Some useful materials, it says. Gives some useful materials, but no more answers. So deconstructing it is not going to give us the tech for building it. It may give us the materials that you can use to build one. But anyway, so the engineer deconstructs it. They then walk into this black stuff, okay? It'll talk about that in the next section. But yes, it's clearly a thing. It's clearly a part of the game, a mechanic to it. Notice how they slow down as they run through it. So it's a slow movement there, and then speeds up. They're then very fast on this stuff. This appears to be like an alien road, basically. So this is the alien equivalent of, putting stone or concrete down on the surface. And it is clearly a different type of material. So this was one of the reasons I was mentioning about there not being too many of those stone things. We don't see a stone patch. There could obviously be stone patches. It's just because we're not seeing it. But this type of road is different to normal type of road, because normal type of road is very much, engineer geometric structures. This is just randomized. So it could either be a natural path. It could be something that the engineer can't do and can't touch, can't pick up, and they're just there on the surface, just random roads or directed roads going around. But yeah, this is clearly a path on which you can walk at higher speed. There is also, I clicked the wrong button. Notice here. So what I was talking about, this is clearly natural cliff. This looks like player-made cliff, natural cliff, and I say player-made, alien-made, I guess, cliff, and then more of this unnatural alien, made cliff. So, I say to me, this doesn't look like wall in the traditional way we would build wall. This looks more like a way of building artificial cliff. So the question then is why you would want to do that. I mean, it's cool, but as I say, to me, these look like river, deserted river valley, like, where a dried up riverbed would be. So is that why they're there? They're just to show that, aesthetic. Is it something we can build? Are we going to be able to manage water courses, with them? It could also, obviously, another secondary function for cliffs is that they allow you to act as walls, basically, and biters, cannot, they're unpassable by biters, but also immune to biter attack. So is that the difference? These are artificial cliffs, which biters cannot damage, and are blocked by, compared to walls, which biters can damage. That opened, if that's what it is, and we can build them, and they're not just there as an aesthetic thing, that opens up a heck of a lot of possibilities, because you're going from a position where, if you're not familiar, the reason you can't build water in the game, there is no water fill in the default game, is because you could easily create channels which the biters simply wouldn't be able to pass, because they can't go over water. So the same applies to cliffs. They cannot pass cliffs, but we've only been able to build walls which the biters can destroy, so they would be able to get through. If we're allowed to build artificial cliffs, it creates that way of barriering out biters. So that could be an interesting possibility. I'm not sure it will be that. I think this is just a version of walls that the player can build that just blends very well into cliffs to encourage us to play with cliffs, basically. The other thing I wanted to point out on this little bit are these, basically. We'll see loads of these. It's sort of it looks like a structure, basically. And we will come on to seeing like destroyed structures, so it could be part of that. But as mentioned, some of this stuff looks quite organic, so we'll just play it on a little bit. So there's a whole load more of them here, and they look like ribs, or like I keep saying ribs, they look like spinal columns, like alien spinal columns. And that could just be a design thing, that could just be how the aliens built walls. This is their equivalent of bricks. If you've ever seen foundations when they've done an archaeological dig, then they do look like sort of bricks that are in the soil, as it were. So I think it might just be that. We've got more of the trees here. Again, we've got this here. Is it a decorative? Is it something we can pick up? Something we can build? There are some more stones there. More of this barrier type cliff, we'll call it. The first of a structure. Again, looks quite organic, Lots of roads. Again, the sort of, structures. And what are they? And now we're getting to the really interesting part. So, we've got loads of ruins. One down here, again, lots of these. So again, are they, just ancient walls that collapsed, etc., etc., or is it something else? Something separate here. That looks like an archway, an entrance to a building, maybe. I haven't a clue what a lot of this stuff would be, but it's all clearly of a type, and it is, very consistent in its design. There'll be more of it later, but these look like buildings. If you look at where they are in relation to roads, and it does describe it this way later, it's a sort of a town, or would you call it an urban area? Maybe not quite that, but it doesn't have the feel, and so the way they explain it and the way these are, it doesn't have the feel of just like a factory, like the engineer would build. It does seem more like perhaps somewhere aliens would have lived. So it's an ancient sort of town rather than an ancient factory. It could, of course, be either, both, neither. It's just some alien structures, and I'm reading too much into it. But this is fascinating, basically, because this, I believe, I've not got there. I've actually been playing through SpaceX and enjoying it more than I thought I would. But I've been playing through SpaceX, and I'm only still, on the base on Navis, basically. But as I understand it, there are alien things out in the world that imply some kind of story element to the game. If that's the case, I am really excited for that, because that was always something. I mean, Factorio is just such a good game that it doesn't bother me that, there's no plot to the game, there's no story, there's no meaning to anything, really. But it's so good, it just gets past that. And it's other games I've kind of had to have that to a degree. So Dyson Sphere program, I love it because you build a Dyson Sphere. That is a thing that you do. That is your objective. Tectonica I love because it's got, a sort of a reason for you doing stuff. You don't know what that is at the moment, but there's a plot to it. Satisfactory, I have no clue what it is, but we know there's fix it, and we know there's some reason for you being on the planet and doing the thing, and that's all coming up in 1.0, what that's going to be. It just always feels nice to have a purpose. And so if this is a mystery we've got to unsolve, if there's some alien race that has left something for us to find or that we can find, then that to me is really exciting. It's an interesting element to the game. It always does bring up a little bit of an issue in that if you go too story heavy in these, it's then really repetitive when you're playing the game through again and again. I'm sure they balanced that up properly, and it's just something that it's there. Maybe there'll be a couple of descriptions in a few things you can create. There's some special thing that you can mine up and find, and that just helps you out in some way. But that's why you want it. You don't necessarily have to go through the story every single time. It's just a flavour thing, really. But yeah, what could some of these be? I mean, this to me looks like a kiln, like a clay, or dyes or something like that. It's very odd. And this to me does look like an entranceway, a sort of like arches as you go through. This one looks like some kind of chimney or something like that. This could be a boiler of some description, for doing something with fluids. These have much more of a feel of actual industrial buildings. That there is fascinating. I don't know what that is, but it looks amazing. Not too many repeats, I don't think. In fact, are there any? Is the same structure repeated more than once? There is another one of these there, look. So we got another of the lightning rods. It did mention in the description as well, didn't it, that the implication is that perhaps until you can build these yourself... Do you think those are skeletons, mate? That's interesting what those are. I just noticed that. Anyway, until you can build these yourself or build your equivalent of them, maybe you're better leaving these and they'll protect you while you build something. I suppose one of the questions this does also invite is, can we mine these structures? Do they give us anything? It's already said that by mining the first of these, you didn't get the technology. Maybe it's this mechanic they've talked about where you have to do a thing, once before to unlock certain technologies. So maybe you have to mine up 5 of them or something like that, and then you can unlock the technology. It could just be a simple research, and it's once you've encountered the first one, that's when you can start researching it yourself. But the implication, as I say, is it's better to leave these for when you get on the planet because they'll protect you from the lightning. The other thing I would say, and it's a very weird observation, but these are tiny, these holes. I mean, they could be windows, I guess, maybe. But I don't know. There's a lot of evidence, really, that the evidence... I'm making it sound like it's a massive conspiracy, but the engineer appears to be huge, or on a different scale to everything else. Because if you compare them to a tree, versus a human versus a tree, they are absolutely gigantic compared to all of the native fauna. We've also got another one of these... cliffy type structures here. As day breaks, the sun glistens off the dark substance below the plateau's cliffs. The surface seems to be a dark, churning layer of oil mixed with sand. This is not a pristine new world after all. This is an already polluted one. You descend the plateau into the dark, shifting terrain. The disgusting tar-like mixture sticks to your feet. The oil is not so deep that you cannot walk through it, but the soft sand below forces you to keep moving. As you climb the next plateau, you find an ancient paved road that leads through another desert. The rubble of ancient walls protrudes from the sand in places, revealing a convoluted pattern of corridors and passages. As you travel further, some of the ruins show signs of ancient machinery poking through the sand. Yeah, so, basically the video we've just been through, so they go into this. Now, this is described as an oily tar-like substance mixed with sand. So does that mean that this is oil on this planet, basically, and that we can mine this up? Because that would be a very different mechanic from how we get oil at the moment. At the moment, obviously, we use pump jags. So is this something where we can put miners on, actual mining drills, and we perhaps get an oil sand out of it, and then we have to process oil sand into oil and sand? And perhaps sand we can then make into bricks, which was part of my thinking for why I was saying there didn't seem to be a lot of random stones on the thing. So perhaps that's a mechanic for us to getting bricks. Of course, sand, a lot of mods, they'd use sand to make glass. So that could be another thing, that there is going to be glass in this structure. And on that front, if you look at the old thing here, is that not a glass bauble on the top? I mean, no, probably not. You'd think it'd be metal, but, you know, could glass basically be a new mechanic here? It would make a lot of sense because, you know, you get like when lightning strikes sand, you do get, you know, like naturally formed glass. So yeah, so basically they also mentioned that the slow movement. So as you run through the sand, oh, I don't know why you didn't like playing that bit. As you run through the sand there, you are slower. So that is clearly a mechanic. I think these are the bricks that it's talking about. But to me, they look quite organic and like spine-like. And then it's just saying as you run up here, you know, you eventually find these buildings. These things do look awesome. You know, cliff-like walls. But yes, so that was just explaining what was going on. Okay, and last video then. So yeah, loads of buildings shown on this. So the engineer runs up past what we've just seen. We've got a new building type there, different type of building there. Again, if this is human type building, you'd think that this would be like windows basically for someone to look out of. But if, you know, comparing to the engineer, that's a very different scale. They run up here and there's this thing here. This does look quite different to the others. It's also clearly glass. It was actually why I mentioned the potential that we might get to use glass. But yes, if you look at this, it looks different, you know, to the other materials. Because as I say, I think it's a glass-like material, so it's sort of shiny. So if you look at these, I say this is shiny as well, but that looks metallic shiny. And these are obviously, because it's definitely metal. But none of this stuff seems to involve glass that I could sort of discern. It might do, but obviously I don't know what it is. But yes, as we run up past this thing here, you know, it just sort of sticks out like a sore thumb. So what could that be? It could just be random rubbish, obviously, random destroyed stuff. But what is it? Also notice here we're getting more of these walls, and now look at that. That looks like a porthole or sort of a window in that cliff-like structure. So what might that mean? You know, why would you have a hole into which and why would it have what are clearly wires on there? Again, it could just be these are alien structures. We're not going to be able to build them. They're doing this for, you know, stylistic purposes, for design purposes. And again, it looks kind of like quite Giga-esque, you know, quite aliens and that blending of organic and machinery. It's very reminiscent of his art style. So we run up then. Now, this is really big, I think. I'm saying that, well, I say that. It looks to me like it's fallen over. You know, it's fallen on its side. It could just be a building that's, you know, collapsed down, I guess. But it does to me look like something that's fallen over. And yeah, it almost looks spaceshipy. You know, I don't know, obviously. I don't know what it is. But, and, you know, maybe it's just some random thing. But these look like maybe components that have fallen off it and as it's fallen over, you know. So that's a particularly interesting one. The other thing that this begs to me as well is to what degree this planet is going to be authored. Oh, by the way, there's another pipey thing there poking up that hole. The reason I'm mentioning that is that type of thing, to me, implies that there's an underground layer, you know, that this is actually a building in and of itself, or that there's a subterranean basement to it, or something like that. Because why else would you need holes in something to go inside? It would have to be that there is something to go inside too, and that would be that. You know, if it was just cables run underneath the ground, why would there be a random one poking out here connecting to, you know, nothing in particular? So that's the reason I'm sort of mentioning that. We've then got this. This looks like almost like a properly contained version of that oil stuff. And notice how this has this darker structure in the middle here. So maybe we can't mine the general oil material. Yeah, you see how we've got two sort of layers, haven't we? I hadn't really realised that. So there's sort of a dark, ish stuff, and then really, really almost black. So are these different, grades of material, or does it have different stuff we can mine out of it? Because it does look really oily, and it would be quite cool to be able to, mine this stuff up, and a separating process for oil and sand would be quite interesting to work with, I think. And I say, this does look like it's almost contained, so I'm wondering if this is the permanent resource, this is like permanent resource, like your equivalent of oil wells, basically. We've got even more structuring on this alien stuff. The more I see this, to be honest with you, the more I think we're probably not going to be able to build any of this, and it's just there for colour and flavour. Again, to what extent is it authored? Because if the way Factorio maps are generated at the moment, and you expect every planet to be generated, it is RNG type stuff. It's procedural. It generates a map based on a seed. It's not a fixed layout. It's not a fixed structure. So are they doing that with this this stuff? It's going to be fascinating. That if that's the case, the technical Friday Facts that goes into that is going to be fascinating, because how do you build something that looks like a town or a city or a factory built by an alien, and yet keeps that RNG nature? Because otherwise you would just have a fixed map, and that could get quite boring, especially for us Factorio players who are used to that randomized nature of it. But yes, we're getting all sorts of extra structure on the these designed cliffs or designed walls or whatever they are. And again, this looks like some kind of liquid passing in, doesn't it? Like it's a pipe. And so that may be, again, that's just how the aliens harvested this, because this is another one that needs oil. So if the thing goes away. But this is another one of these oil things, this oil seeping area or whatever you want to call it. And so maybe this is how the aliens harvested that. There was some pipe work that they put in there, and then they had pipes underground that, sent the oil where they need it to go. We may not get to play with that, but that could be what they're trying to hint at, maybe. We've got this building here, again, things on it that look like glass to me. So maybe there is glass in the game. More buildings here. These are quite big. Is that maybe the one that's fallen over on the other thing? You've got like, what do you call them? Like crane arms hanging off of it, which is interesting. It looks reminiscent of the Foundry. These look interesting. Another one of those. And of course another one of the lightning conductors. What have we got here? We've got ribs and stuff have stuck out. So yeah, ribs and stuff are stuck out here. This looks like something on the top that would like spin and rotate and move around, sat on a sort of a bearing system. Again, these are all, I'm not expecting us to build any of this stuff. I think it's all here just to say the aliens, we're doing weird things. I don't think these are buildings we will build, but they are really fascinating. And I always like to try and, it's part of the whole speculation thing I do of, it's just how I am. And I just think, well, what is that? How does that work? What might I do? And I say, so these sorts of things just fire off those sorts of synapses in my brain, basically. But yeah, and I say, I don't think we'll get to build any. All sorts more destroyed structures. I assume we're going to be able to mine these. They will give us some resources, let us build stuff. More of the ribby structure here. There is also the first part of this here. And more on that in a second. These now, with if that is brick, we now seem to have wires that are tracing along the edges of the brick. So it sort of changes into what it is here, and how it all seems to work. And we get this stuff. So, what is this? Because this looks like a new resource that we can mine up. But it's multicoloured. It also looks like metal. It's got sort of pipework, wires running through it in a sense. So what the heck is this? There's all sorts of possibilities. It could be, the colour stuff could be glass. It could be ceramics. We could be able to sort of mine up a ceramic material. The integration of kind of wires into it implies it's some sort of machinery. It's got to be something. It's got to be something we can interact with in some way, because why else would it be here, But yeah, what the heck that could be, I don't know. And it looks like patches as well, We've got more different building types here. That's one we've seen before. And yeah, these look like patches of stuff. If it isn't actual material we can mine, material we can use, then it could be, again, it could be a glass. It could be that we're basically getting the ability to make glass. One of the things I hope, if that's the case, that we're going to get decoratives in the base game. I said before, to me it's like almost the one big wish I would have, and it's a bit random, is to get something like Factorio, the decoratives mod, into base game, because although I love the diesel punk aesthetic to the game, I love having multicolour concrete and being able to do text plates and all that sort of stuff. So if this is hinting we're going to get glass, and you can use glass to make glass panels and stuff like that you can put words on and things like that, that's going to be awesome. I'm really going to enjoy playing with that and making my factories look awesome and aesthetic. Otherwise, what else could it be? It looks like a machinery, and that's the weird bit. So maybe another option, maybe it's a mixed resource, basically, and you can mine it, but you'll get iron, you'll get copper, you'll get steel, you get bits of stone, you'll get glass, as I say, ceramics, and it just gives you almost a randomized material that you can use, and it's then up to you to build sorting, basically, and sort everything out and manage the resources, send them where they need to go, etc., etc. And that could be quite an interesting thing to play with. We then sort of zoom up here. I'm just trying to see if there are any. There's probably, if you fiddle about with the, contrast, there's probably something hidden here, but I'm not going to do that. There is, at the very, very end, well, you can hear it as well, there's a lightning strike. So this is the lightning coming along again. And as I say, to me, that suggests it is a randomised thing. In the distance, you see some much larger structures in clusters. The strange rounded shapes of the ruined architecture makes them look like robed figures huddled together. The one road becomes a network of many roads that each lead to towering alien buildings. Few of the buildings retain their roofs. Many of them must have been much taller, skyscrapers maybe. Using one as a vantage point, countless more sites like this can be seen on the horizon. This was not just a mining town or an outpost city, this was a whole civilization. Yet all that moves over the grave landscape now is the sun, the sky, and the sand. So yeah, this, I was talking about the authoring of the planet. This to me suggests that actually these aren't going to be authored, as I was suspecting, that it is going to be a randomly placed city. Now maybe every city's the same and it's done the same, but it feels like, they'd go a bit further than that, and they'd come up with some ways of like clustering buildings together and putting similar types together and then clustering them around that, whatever that material is, whatever that resource. It could be nothing. It could be that the idea is it's an ancient plaza or something that the aliens had and it's all just damaged now. But if it isn't, and those buildings are basically completely pointless, why are they there? It's an awful lot of effort to go to in order to create something that, it's pretty and interesting, but what's the point of it being there? Conclusion. Some of the sounds, decoratives and structures are either placeholders or still need some work. The combination of all the assets so far, despite being unfinished, gives this new planet a really distinct mood and atmosphere. Of course, it's not just aesthetics that make Fulgora unique. We'll be back with more details about the mechanics and what you can do on Fulgora soon. As always, shock us with your thoughts at the usual places. So I'm giving you my initial reactions as we've gone through each video. I don't have a lot more to say, if you can believe that, with it being me. I don't think I have any more speculation. Overall, really impressed. I'm even more impressed with this, to be honest, than the Volcanus thing. Volcanus seemed like it was introducing some really cool buildings to play with. A lava planet, as they were saying in the actual reveal, was almost inevitable, just a hot planet that's, lava and superheated and all that sort of stuff. It was almost inevitable, and it looked interesting, but nothing surprising. This is surprising. Getting an ancient city, an ancient civilization I'm hoping that there are traces of this civilization on other planets. That it's more than just Fulgora. Could there be alien space platforms? Is this an interplanetary civilization? And what technologies are we going to be able to get out of this? Because it's ripe for possibilities, I think. It does say we can't mine these and get the tech, so maybe it's not based on just destroying the buildings and you get the stuff. A lot of these, as I say, have a sort of a glass, shiny type nature to them, so is glass coming into the game? What is this blue and red and grey speckled material that has wires going through it? What is that all about? Does it mean anything? Is it just decorative? But this has got to be the major part to the game, hasn't it? And to what extent are we getting a story in Factorio? Is that the big thing that's being added? I did my speculation video as I'll try and put a card on. I'm rubbish about that type of thing, but I'll try and put a card on if you want to go and watch that. It is long, but it's quite fun. But one of the things I was saying about for the end game is, are we building a gigantic proper spaceship for us to travel back home? Are we building a warp portal for us to get back home? This to me feeds into that. Feeds into it in the sense that it fuels even more speculation from me. But it feels like maybe this is going to be the place where we will be able to uncover the techs that allow us to, build whatever that end game structure is. It could be, having seen this and it's been described as a city and not just a factory and not just an outpost and that sort of thing. Could this be that actually we build ourselves a home? We abandon the idea of getting back to our own planet and instead we build ourselves a city. And it leans more into maybe the city defense aspect of the game if we get some kind of biter that is ever spawning and infinite and not removable. That's an interesting idea, I think, that you could try, you could build houses and stuff like that. It feels a bit limited, being the engineer is just one entity, has no evidence of needing, food and water and any of that stuff. Apparently can function perfectly well in 4 Gs of gravity and 4 times the pressure on the surface of Earth. So I've always maintained that I think the engineer is some kind of robot or android, but whatever it is incredibly robust and doesn't have the same life requirements we have, so building a city would seem kind of pointless to help the engineer survive. But it could just be a nice thing. It could be an addition for aesthetics and those of us who like to build aesthetic builds. Particularly fascinated by these, what the heck this is. It does feel like this is going to be a resource that we can mine in some way or do something with, basically. But this, what were the aliens up to with this walling it in and having pipes and wires and all that sort of stuff? What were they doing? How did their economy and stuff work? Looking at these, hang on, I just realised these are flowers, aren't they? Huh. I wonder if... Hang on, let's have a look at some of the other... Because they were on some of these other videos. Can we see that? They could be. They're all tiny, though. Oh, yeah. That's a flower. Yeah, these are flowers. That is very interesting. It could just be decorative, and in fact it probably is just decorative. But it's an odd thing to choose as a decorative. I'm just wondering, I don't know who it was, I'm afraid, someone mentioned on one of my comments that maybe there'll be spice in the game, as in June spice, and that maybe that'll be a key resource for, if you want to go home, maybe you can put it in a coma or on time travel-y type of thing. Maybe the navigation thing that it gives them in June, for example. But yeah, that's interesting that is flowers. So is that harvestable? Is that something you can grow, or is it just intended as a decorative and they're just desert flowers type of thing? But then, what would flowers be using for water? Yeah, so is it spice? I didn't realise. I just assumed it was some kind of mineral. That it was like bits of stone or bits of crystal or something like that. But that is flowers. I suppose also just to end off, this gives me a lot more confidence that the art is progressing. I've expressed a few times before in the most recent videos because we hadn't sort of seen anything new, and there seemed to be a lot of placeholder stuff. And they do say the sound is placeholder and some of the art is placeholder. Some of the sounds, decoratives and structures are either placeholders or still need more work. So, it's not finished, but This is feeling a lot more like, they're not as behind as I was starting to get afraid they were. So that's really nice, that feeling. Because it just sort of started to feel like we were being told a lot more of the techie stuff because they needed more time to, put things in the actual game. But yeah, this is starting to feel like got the basics. They just need to, refine it and tweak it and pretty it up, sort of thing. That's always nice to see. I hope you enjoyed today's Friday Facts video and might consider coming back for another one. If you want to chat about the latest Factorio Friday Facts, then you can find me live streaming Factorio every Saturday over on my Twitch channel at Trismegistus. Thanks for watching. Cheers. That's a flower. That was a weird noise.